Hi everyone, my name is Rachel and welcome to the French Seams. Thank you very much for joining me for today's video. This is all about the 10 things I have learned since I started sewing. There are many more things, but I thought I'd keep it at 10. And I've been thinking an awful lot about these recently because I am currently hosting a fabulous challenge with my lovely friends Katherine, Sew to Makery, and Sam, Sew Let's Sparkle with Sam, and it's called Sew Phoenix September 25. It's basically all about breathing new life into a garment or an accessory, whatever, that you've made in the past that may or may not have gone very well, that you would like to breathe new life into. So say for example, a number of years ago you made a dress and you weren't that confident with invisible zips, and now you can do invisible zips in your sleep. It now is a chance to remake that garment. It's all about remaking based on your knowledge, your skills, your experience that you now have that you mightn't have had when you made that initially. So the phoenix rising from the ashes. So it's definitely given me a lot to think about. I definitely have a few projects that I would like to remake. They didn't really go terribly well the first time, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to try again, and I do hope you join us in that challenge. I'll link it all below and of course tag Sam and Katherine, so be sure to check out their videos and their Instagram as well. So shall we get started? These are in no particular order. It was basically what I've been thinking about recently. The first thing I'd like to talk to you about is using household items in your sewing practice. So I've got one example here, is a little old jar of jam, and this is really useful for storing your broken pins, broken needles, all those sharp things to keep them very safe. So I definitely use that. I've also used an old cereal box. You draw a line in it to measure out your hem. You can fold your fabric over it. It makes a wonderful hemmer, and you can iron, of course, over the cardboard. That's very useful. What I still always do is use dental floss for gathering, which is really useful, especially on bulkier fabrics. I used it once because I had to gather sequins. You lay your dental floss down the middle next to your needle, and then you zigzag over it, and then you can pull the dental floss, and it makes a really strong thread you can pull and you can gather, because we've all been there when you've done 1 or 2 lines of gathering stitches and your thread snaps. Soul destroying. So I still use the dental floss trick, and it's really useful. I've definitely used tins of beans as pattern weights, very useful. So some things lying around the house can be very useful in your sewing practice. The next thing is to use matching thread, and I've certainly been guilty in the past of trying to rush through a project to try and get something finished and just reaching for whatever thread I had available, but it's much nicer to be able to use matching thread if you can, of course, do that. It covers a multitude, some maybe wonky top stitching or some slightly dodgy stitching. It covers all that, and I just think it gives a much nicer finish. So if you can, you get matching thread to match your fabric. It really does level up your sewing. The next thing is to test new techniques, and I find this really useful. I don't usually make toiles of garments. I usually just plough straight in, rightly or wrongly. But if there's a certain technique in there, I really do try to do that separately on just a scrap piece of fabric. So if there's a welt pocket, or if there's a strange zip insertion, if there's a fly, if there's something different in the project, I will definitely cut out a small bit of that pattern piece and test it first, and it really helps. The time you spend doing that little test, you will definitely save making the garment, and of course you'll save your fashion fabric as well when you go to it, because we all know things go wrong and you usually only get 1 attempt. So you don't always have to make a full toile, but just testing that technique really is useful for me, and I found that in the past. The one that springs to mind definitely is the welt pocket in the Pogan pullover that I made a number of years ago. That really helped to make a test version of that, and then I was confident enough to go into it and actually do them in the actual garment. It was really great. The next one I've put down is trust the designer, but of course you can do your own thing as well. So when I say trust the designer, I've been guilty in the past of skimming the instructions. It's a dress, you do the bodice, you do the sleeves, that's near there. I plough on, and then they've said do this and this, and I've thought, oh no, I'll do it my way, and then 2 steps later, oh, that's why they wanted you to do it that way. So I've fallen foul of that in the past. Now I really am a pattern instruction reader. I do trust them that they know what they're talking about. It's their garment, and I try to do it in their way. If I'm making it again and again, I might tweak it slightly, obviously, but initially I will always trust that they know what they're doing, and of course they do. The one thing I do take some liberties with is things like elastic guidelines. If they say, oh, for your joggers or for the elastic in the waist of your dress, here's the measurement you should use. I rarely go by that. I measure my own waist, especially with button plackets, button placement as well. I usually try on the garment, see where the bust goes, put my button there. So I don't always follow the instructions, but I do by and large. Also, I'm really keen on understitching and pressing. So if they tell me to understitch and press, I will definitely do that. I think it gives a marvellous, marvellous finish. And it's one of those steps that I rarely skip, if ever. Number 5, the next one is I've learnt sometimes the hard way. Make for those who appreciate it and buy for those who don't. So I generally now only sew for close family and close friends, and then for everybody else they get ready to wear or shop bought. I think the amount of time and effort and love that we put into making things for others, if they're not appreciated, it sometimes can be really crushing. So if you have very close friends, very close family, people who craft themselves, who know how much time and effort goes into things, make for them by all means. There's such wonderful things you can make for people, but if not, then just buy and just make something nice for yourself instead. Number 7 on my list is try it on again tomorrow. So I generally sew in the evening, sometimes quite late at night, and if I'm trying on a dress, I've been working on it for a few hours, the light is gone, it's really dark, I'm in my pajamas, no makeup on, hair in a bun, I try on a dress and think, I really don't like it. More often than not, the next morning when I try it on, when I'm fresher, when I'm more awake, when I'm more alert, I think, oh, actually it's not too bad. So try it on again tomorrow. Things can always be fixed. Things can always be tweaked. But if you're doing things in a rush or late at night, it's really not the brain safe to be doing it, especially if you're installing a zip late at night, if you're doing some fiddly top stitching. Wait until tomorrow if you have got that luxury of time. Number 7, I think with sewing I have found my tribe. The wonderful sewing people I've met throughout my sewing over the past number of years, the people I've met in person, be it now as friends, people I meet at shows, people I chat to online, sometimes from the other side of the world, the friendships I've made, the chats I have, the stories I hear, the suggestions I get from people, the help I get from people has just been amazing. The sewing community is really wonderful, and I think sewing is one of those hobbies where it's a complete leveler. I talk to people who sew for their grandchildren, who sew for their grandmothers, and then people who have only been sewing a couple of years. I think it's just wonderful. I think it's just such a wonderful hobby that anybody from anywhere can relate to and can talk about. I think it's really great, which is why again I love going to the shows, to meet lovely people, to chat about all things sewing, and I really have met some wonderful people, and people that I now call my friends, and of course people who are now my wonderful friends that we're hosting a sewing challenge together, so namely Sam and Katherine. So thank you very much. It is a wonderful community. The friendships I've forged, and to be going on sewing retreats and sewing days and in-person meetups, it's just wonderful. It really is. So if you are chatting to somebody, you know, make that friendship, reach out to somebody, say, I saw this on your channel, could we talk about this dress, all that kind of good stuff. It's just really lovely. So number 8, if you're going to make a mistake, it's generally going to be in the centre front of your garment. And I've learned this the hard way. If you're putting in buttonholes, the first one will be perfect. The buttonhole centre front will be a disaster. If you're putting in a neckline, the pucker that you get is going to be in the centre front of your garment. If you're putting in a sleeve, it's not going to catch this bit, the most visible bit. This has happened to me so much. If I'm sewing away happily and something happens, I'll pull it out and say, yes, of course, it's the centre front. But we can all rise from the ashes there. We can put in a little bit of decorative top stitching. We can put in a little label, a wonderfully placed label that masks a multitude. We can do a little bit of a plique. We can put in this, that, the other. We can always fix it. But in my experience, it's always happened centre front. No mistake I've ever made has been in the back, but maybe that's just me. Number 9, proper hardware and proper fixtures and fittings goes a very long way. So if I show you an example, this is a bag that I made a number of years ago, and it's the Apex Tote by Incomplete Stitches, a fabulous bag. I use it all the time. So I made this maybe 4 or 5 years ago at this stage. I didn't know a huge amount about it, so I put in a dressmaking zip, because I didn't know you shouldn't. And it's perfectly fine, don't get me wrong, it's perfectly fine, but it doesn't look as good as some of the bags I now make. So dressmaking zip, small little one, a little bit delicate. But then if you look at some of my more recent makes, and this is a make that I made earlier in the year, it's the Mia Messenger bag by BF Patterns. I've got a continuous zip, which I just love. So you can see here, much bigger, much chunkier. You can sew over this no problem, because it's got a metal look, but it's not. And then it's a much chunkier zip. You can buy all manner of wonderful zip pulls. That's a little spool of thread. I've got a little zip charm. It really levels up your sewing to have that wonderful bag zip. So that's just one example. Another example is interfacing. So when I first started, I just bought interfacing. I just thought it was interfacing. So I have a lot of garments that are, shall we say, a little bit crispy, especially in the collar. You're told to interface the collar. I've put in stuff that's basically like cardboard. I had never heard of woven interfacing, which is of course much nicer. So I now use non-woven interfacing for crafty makes, and then I buy very nice woven interface for things like collars, for things like button plackets, and it makes a world of difference. And these are now much more widely available. So it is definitely worth it to source out some nice interfacing. I think your future garment will thank you for sure. So the next up, and it's number 10 on my list, and it's the last one, and it's if in doubt, ask. And I have certainly learned this, and it is just wonderful. As I mentioned earlier, the sewing community is marvellous. If you have a question about anything or can't figure something out, ask somebody and you will have a whole host of responses, I guarantee it. I've done this with dressmaking, I've done it with knitting, I've done it with bag making. You pop a little picture up on Instagram or somewhere and say, I'm making this pattern, I'm stuck in this bit, can somebody please help me? And the sewing community will come to your rescue for sure. I definitely have gone over a number of humps just by the wonderful sewing community helping me out. So they are the 10 things I've learned. They're definitely not the only things I've learned. There's many more, but I won't make this video 14 hours long. Thank you very much for joining me. I wonder, have you come across those things as well in your sewing journey? If there's anything else that you've definitely learned in your sewing journey, I would love to hear about it in the comment box below. Please let me know. Are you going to be joining in Sew Phoenix September? I really hope you do. The challenge is open worldwide. We have a whole host of wonderful prizes, and I think it's going to be really fun to see the things that people are trying to remake based on the knowledge and experience they have now. I think it's going to be a really fun month, and I do hope you get involved. So I should leave it there for now. I'll link everything down below. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I always love having the chats. Thank you very much for joining me for today's video. If you like it, I would very much love it if you give me a thumbs up, and also please consider subscribing. And I will talk to you all again very soon in another video. Take care everyone. Bye.